Hi guys, my name is Minhajudeen Ansari and you're watching another tutorial on C programming, and today I will discuss about the problems that you can encounter while taking input from the user. And these problems are closely related to the concept of buffers. So those of you who haven't watched my previous tutorial on buffers, I highly recommend you watch that tutorial before you watch this tutorial. So right now, I'm going to give you an example of problems you might face. So first I'm going to define my integer variable age and my character variable gender. And I'm going to ask the user to enter their age. And I'm going to scan it using the scanf function. And I'm going to store it inside the variable age. Similarly, I'm going to ask the user to enter their gender. And again, and now this time I'm going to store the gender into a variable gender, character variable gender, using the getChar function. And I already talked about the getChar function in my previous tutorial as well. So you guys should watch that tutorial before you watch this tutorial. So the getChar function simply returns the character pressed from the keyboard and it stores it inside the character variable gender. And in the end, what I will do is that I will print the age and user of the character. So your age is %d and your gender is %c. Age, gender. So this is a very simple program. It takes the age of the user, takes the gender of the user, and displays it in the output screen. So now when I run the program, I'm going to get a small error, and that always happens with Visual Studio, and you guys already know what to do. Simply copy this line right here and right click on your project, properties, preprocessor, and go to edit and just paste that line right here. Click on OK, apply, and OK. So now this program should work perfectly fine. So now when I run the program, it's going to ask me to enter my age. So I'm going to enter my age, and what I expect is that after I enter my age, the program is going to ask me to enter my gender. I'm going to enter my gender, and it's going to display it in the output screen. But when I enter my age, it just skips taking the gender from me, and it simply prints your age is 20 and your gender is nothing. It didn't take my gender from me. The getChar function simply skipped on me. And now, how did that happen? Now, this is all about buffers and how the scanf function actually works. So I already talked about my buffers in the previous tutorial, and simply when you enter characters from your keyboard, so your keyboard is a file. So when you enter your characters from your keyboard, it gets stored inside your buffer. And your buffer is simply an area inside your random access memory, inside your main memory. And it gets stored up till the point of a new line. So when I entered the characters 2 and 0, they were stored inside my buffer, and then I entered the new line. So what happens is 2, 0, and new line was stored inside my buffer. So now the scanf function only takes in characters. It ignores new lines, white spaces, tabs. It ignores all of those. It only takes the characters before the white space, new line, or tab, and all of those white spaces. So what happens is that the scanf function will take the character 2, it will take the character 0, and it will store it inside my integer variable age. And it will just leave the new line character lying inside the buffer. And the new line is also a character. It has a valid ASCII code, and you can check it up in the ASCII table. So it only takes 2 0 characters and it stores it inside the integer variable age. And 2 and 0, these are characters. Your file stores information in the form of characters if it is a text file. So the scanf function first takes the character 2, it converts it into integer, and then it takes the character 0, it converts it into integer, and then it stores the integer inside your integer variable age. So this right here inside your buffer, this is actually a character. It is not an integer variable. It takes only 1 byte, and it is converted by the scanf function into an integer variable and stored inside the integer variable age. Into an integer value and stored inside the variable. So now once the scanf function has scanned those characters and stored them inside your variable age, your buffer is left remaining with the new line character. So this still remains inside the buffer. And now when you call the getChar function, the getChar function will take a character from the buffer. So what the getChar function will do is that it will take the new line character from the buffer and it will store it inside the character variable gender. So ultimately, it will just simply store the new, it will first extract this new line from the buffer, and then it will store it inside the gender character variable. And this explains why the cursor was in the new line. So again, when I enter 20 and press enter, my cursor is in the new line. This is actually my gender. And the gender is actually a new line because it took the new line character from the buffer and stored it inside my character variable gender. So, I mean, how do I solve this issue? In order to solve this issue, what I need to do is that I need to clear my buffer before I call the getChar function to extract the character from the buffer. So I need to clear the buffer. I need to remove the new line character from the buffer. And how can I do that? I can do that by simply writing the getChar function before I take my gender. So this will simply take the getChar. It will take a character from the buffer, and that character will be a new line. So it will just discard that new line character, and then the buffer will be empty. And then when the user presses another character from the keyboard, that character will be stored inside the character variable gender. So now when I run the program, first, I'm going to enter my age, 20, and then I'm going to enter my gender, male, and then it will work perfectly. Your age is 20 and your gender is male. So this is how, your buffer works, and this is how your input functions actually work. So, let me show you that. Finally, before I end this tutorial, I'm going to show you what's actually happening again. So my keyboard, this is my keyboard, and this is my buffer, which is a sequence of bytes. So it can store characters. So when I enter 20 and then press the new line, 2, 0, and the character new line gets stored inside my buffer. And now the scanf function simply takes 2 and 0, these two characters, it converts it into integer and stores it inside the integer variable age. So now my buffer only has the new line character stored inside it. And then when I call the getChar function, I call the getChar function 2 times. So when I first call the getChar function, it will simply take the new line from the buffer and it will discard it because I'm not storing it inside any variable. I'm just calling the getChar function. So ultimately, the new line character will not be stored anywhere. It will be discarded. So now my buffer will be empty. There's nothing inside my buffer. So now the user will, when the user enters male or female from the keyboard, for example, I entered male and pressed enter. So again, my buffer will have the character M and the new line character which I pressed after I entered the character M. So now the second getChar function, what it will do is that it will take the M, which is inside my buffer, and it will store it inside the character variable gender. And finally, my buffer will be left again with the new line character. So if you want to extract another character from the buffer, then you'll have to get rid of this new line before you can do so. So this is all it about taking inputs and buffers. Again, these concepts are very important. You have to know them. No other YouTube tutorial no other YouTube tutorial, as far as I've seen, has explained it in this much detail. So if you have any questions, please ask them in the comment section, and thanks for watching this video.